I wonder if I talk like this with you, you would still listen or what? Or you want me to just sit there all the time in front of the camera? Perhaps because you're just constantly watching with a smaller screen, right? With your mobile phones. So you want to see my face and see what's going on. But I kind of like walking, especially walking and thinking. It's very helpful. And I consider these videos the thinking process. I don't consider them anything special or anything valuable. For me, it's just thoughts, comes and goes, doesn't have much value. But maybe for you, it has. Maybe you get into my head and perhaps heal yourself through what's inside my head. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. That's why I'm releasing these videos. Because I want you to get into my head and make things a little bit more, in a way, juicy for yourself. In a way, I would say psychedelic. Because that's how I see the world. I see the world psychedelic. I don't see it as 2 plus 2. Sometimes my 2 plus 2 becomes 5, and sometimes it just doesn't give any result or answer. So I recommend that kind of way of looking at the world, because then you give certain amount of abstraction to your world, certain amount of abstraction to your reality, that it doesn't really fit with the norm anymore. So you don't need to follow the norm. You can just follow whatever path you create for yourself. Because if I was just following the norm, for example, I would always make 4 out of 2 plus 2, because that's just normal and that's just what the world wants. When you go to a job, no one just expect you to put 5 in front of 2 plus 2, because if you do that you will just get fired instantly, because that's basic math. And why would you not be able to do basic math? That means you're just simply not even capable of understanding a child's education. But then people don't think out of the box, they always think inside the box. They always want to label things, they always want to categorize things, they always want to make sense out of things. And that's where everything crumbles, when you want to make sense out of things. Because things don't make sense at all. Like, you should know by now that things doesn't make sense. Like, nothing makes sense. What makes sense in your life? Can you tell me about one thing that makes sense in your life? Absolutely nothing. Zero. In all of our lives, it's not only your life. Everyone just somehow pretending that they figured it out. Somehow they pretending that this is it. I know what's life because I am PhD in this science, in this section of knowledge. And the other one is like, yes, I'm an enlightened being in whole spirituality world, right? I connected, I have channels, then I can just channel to you, give you whatever you need. I am just a vessel, all of these things. But even their life doesn't make sense, right? For themselves, they're just like always mind boggled. Like, why would people listen to me? I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't see any channel. I don't see any possibility. I think I just talk whatever comes out of me from my brain, and people think God is talking or what, right? That's what's happening with the world. One side is too scientific and the other side is too hallucinogenic. That's hard to say. Hallucinogenic. Well, you get the point what I'm trying to say. The point is, your life doesn't make sense. My life doesn't make sense. What should we do to fix this? How we can give sense to our life? I think by getting into my brain. Why? Because there were times that I was going crazy. There were times that I was going mad. There were times that I wanted to kill myself. Like, we don't have above this, right? Like, if you are suicidal, that's the worst thing that can happen to you. Like, there's no other worst thing. Because you already gave up. You already gave up on this life and you already gave up on the existence. You want non-existence. Because existence is just so unbearing. Existence is just so hard to comply with. Which I consider this the peak of depression. The peak of that hike that you've been doing for the past few years, perhaps, to get to a point that you become so depressed. Now you don't see any value in life. Now you don't see any value in anything. And you prefer to just lose yourself to the comfort of life. You prefer to lose yourself to the agony of life. You prefer to choose to lose yourself to the miserable state of life. If you're having a good life, you just tell yourself, yeah, what's better than this? This is the best I can get. I'm having it. Let's just enjoy it. Most people, that's how they cope when they become rich. Because they need to cope, because all in their head they thought if we become rich, perhaps life becomes meaningful. And then they become rich and they still realize, no, life doesn't have any meaning. How would it have any meaning by money? You know, it's just like having money is a state of living in this world. And I would say whoever lives in this world is miserable. Whoever lives in this world is suffering. Unless you want to change your world, that's a different matter, right? But if you live in this world, in this modern world, then you must accept. You must accept that life is suffering. Life is suffering. That's the peak. That's the peak of human beings today. Depression. Peak depression. Everyone is suicidal. Everyone wants to just live whatever they're living right now and not think about anything else. Because that's what they're capable of. Beyond that, no one wants to move. Beyond that, no one wants to change things. Beyond that, no one even wants to change themselves. They dream about it, but often fail, because how can you change yourself when you don't believe in living? When you don't believe in this life? How you want to give yourself enough motivation and inspiration to come out of that depression? It's impossible, because your 2 plus 2 is 5, is 4 already. You cannot go beyond it. You're just so inside the box. You cannot think of 5. You cannot think of 4. You cannot think of 3 different possibilities, because you're just so stuck in this life. You're so depressed in this life. You have all the possibility to come out of it. You have all the possibility to become whoever you want to be. At least, let's say, in the long term. then what you do, you go on, live 10 years without doing anything. I'm talking about myself. That's what I did. 10 years I wanted to change the world. 10 years I wanted to be whatever I wanted to be, and I never did anything for it. I never lifted a finger to really pursue that vision. I always had it in my mind. I always just like all these thoughts were just going on in my head and was feeling good because I also, well, I was smoking weed as well. That's the worst thing you can do when you have so much creativity, because the creativity only turns to thoughts. You smoke weed and you just think and just enjoy the thoughts, because in your thoughts you are the most talented artist, in your head you are the most talented creator. And then the moment it wears off, you're like, okay, now how are you, depression? I'm not against smoking weed. I gotta tell you that if you smoke weed, because you most probably smoke weed, right? That's what I gathered. Most the spiritual people do, and perhaps that's one of the reasons that they think they're spiritual, but they just simply smoke weed, and that's fine. It's totally fine. I do smoke myself, I have to tell you that, but under certain circumstances. Perhaps, in short, I gotta tell you that if you smoke lots of weed, realize that you are living your thoughts. Realize that what's happening in your head is simply a possibility that you will never accomplish it. Whatever you go in your head, you have a guitar at home, just it's hung on the tree, on the wall for the past 10 years, and you haven't touched it at all. Every time you smoke weed, you look at the guitar and you're like, oh, wow, I could be playing great song right now. And in your head, you're playing it. But you never really take the chance to pick the guitar and do it, because, you prefer the thoughts of it. And that's where weed becomes tricky. It gives you the thoughts, but not the action. And perhaps just also the traditional way of smoking weed gives you that non-action, non-doing of it, which is nice if you really sorted your life out, and if you can have a lifestyle that you can be high all the time, do it. But if you have a lifestyle that you cannot afford to be high all the time, well, perhaps think about it. Because I tell you what, something that perhaps is important is smoking weed only makes sense if you also don't smoke weed and live, But if it becomes coping mechanism, if it becomes something that you constantly want it, otherwise you can't enjoy your life, then that's alarming. How did we get here? I think we dropped off the wagon so long time ago when I talked about weed. I should have not told you about weed, but I did. Now we have so many other people that they don't smoke weed and they are not interested in the video. What do we do now? We apologize and we move on. I was telling you about this process in the head, the thoughts, right? Perhaps I have to make one video, maybe educational, some nonsense educational video about something that I call it chit-chat mind, a conversational mind. But I think scientifically they call it metacognition, thinking about thinking. I was telling you, if you get into my head, you will get lost. Why is that? Because the layers that you put yourself in the process of thinking is much lower of my process of thinking. I'm not saying it's good or bad, okay? I'm just telling you the truth. Okay. Some kid is crying in the back and taking me out of this place right now. Why I think in more layers is because I meditated a lot. And when you meditate a lot, when you meditate for hours, they say you become enlightened. But I say a different way of it. I don't think you become enlightened in a way that you become a Buddha, that there is no thoughts at all. I think in the modern world, enlightenment is when you become absolutely aware of all your thoughts. That's the modern way of becoming enlightened. If you are completely aware, absolutely aware of all the possibilities of your thoughts in your brain, you're enlightened. Perhaps this is some new way of saying that's how an enlightened being must look like in the modern world, because when 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, when people wanted to transfer this whole idea of enlightenment, they had to use a non-thinking metaphor, the nothingness. The nothingness was more relatable to farmers, to people that they don't have much thinking process. They have routine, they have cycles, they do things completely based on cycles, they do things completely based on routines. There is no possibility of a spontaneous activities. For example, no one was waking up in the morning and thinking about, oh, today I gotta go play some tennis with John, for example. No, there was no tennis, there was no other, sports that you could just do so many different things. There was just only routines of life. In this way, it's so easy to tell people that, look, enlightenment is this routine disappears. There is no routine anymore. Everything happens on its own. You become part of the nature. And that process becomes you, and you become that process. But in the modern world, things work differently. We are accustomed with thinking. And not only 10 thinkings during the day, 20, 30, 50. No, we are accustomed with constant thinking. Constant. The moment one thinking is over, another one comes. And another one, and another one, and another one. And in the modern world, people get conditioned to stay in this position, get conditioned to stay in this possibility of so much thinking in a very short span of time. Because, of course, we have internet, because, of course, we have so much information, abundance of information is going to our head. We have reels, TikToks, all these small videos that all of them contain days of thinking. If one person wants to make a viral video, days of thinking goes into that, perhaps 10 seconds of video. And in that 10 seconds of video, you get the whole result of it. So days of thinking goes to your head. Every 10 seconds, every scroll, days of thinking goes to your head. And you're constantly in the state of thinking because your brain is just simply a computer. And I don't know how nerdy are you with the computers. It's just so simple to realize if my brain is a computer, then it's so easy to break. Because I haven't seen a computer that works fine. They always lag, they always miss something. They always want to update things. They always have to upgrade. They always have to improve. And they also lose performance. So, if your brain is a computer, then you gotta accept that these thoughts that is going in your computer has to at least have an overview. That's enlightenment. If you have an overview of your hard drive, that's enlightenment. But you don't have that overview. Like all your files are scattered around. One of them is in Google Cloud, the other one is in Apple Cloud, the other ones are in your notes, right? Hundreds of places that you store information, data in your real life and actually in your brain too. And you don't know how to access them. You don't know how to go and find whatever file you are looking for. Why? Because simply you don't remember where you put it. Now imagine you sit and meditate, right? Now imagine you put all these files in their place. Now imagine there will be a point that you have an overview of all the files in your computer. That's enlightenment. And why I say my brain is closer to that is because, well, I suffered through so much of thinking. It wasn't easy, It was hours and hours of just thinking. And then you get to a point that is hours on hours of not thinking. But it was worth it. It was definitely worth it. That's why I am here. That's why I want to push everyone into that state. Even if it's needed that I push them off a cliff, I would do it. Don't take it literally though. I don't want to take responsibility of anything that happens to you. YouTube, if you're listening, I didn't say that. I meant I pushed them off a cliff that is very, very close to the water. Like maybe just 10 centimeters higher than the water, because I want them to wake up with the water, not wake up with the free fall. Okay, YouTube? So, what is it going to be? I guess you tell me about your 2 plus 2, okay? Don't make it 4. Make it psychedelic. But also remember, not hallucinogenic, right? Not hallucinations. Possibilities. Actualization. Different realities. Not fantasy. I'm not talking about fantasy. That's what people often think about psychedelic trips. Fantasy. It's not fantasy. It's a different world. It's a different reality. Simply a different dimension, and that's it. You got it. But hallucination is different. It's when you are not in control of your thoughts. When your inner and outside loses its contrast. When your imagination becomes your reality. That's a different matter. Anyways, how's it going? It's going fine. I think that was enough for today. Take care of yourself.